And here we go. Welcome everybody to The Big Idea. I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Hanna, where we talk about how a little bone at the base of your head can have a profound impact on your health, well-being, can change your quality of life. But interestingly, we are not going to be talking about that here today at all. One of my mentors, Dr. Joe Arano out in Australia, he had shared a article on, and I'll read the title here for you, the relationships between intestinal permeability and target antibodies for a spectrum of autoimmune diseases. This is going to be a brief little talk about leaky gut syndrome as that relates to autoimmune markers. And the reason I want to share this is, as important as it is to talk about proper functioning of the nerve system, making sure that your spine is in proper alignment so that those messages can communicate properly. This one here is so big and so important for people who experience chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, or any number of autoimmune condition. I have got to share this article with you because this is such a big deal. And, I've talked about this in practice any number of times, but I want to show you some of the data to support it. So let's jump into it right here. Okay, and here we are. I'm not going to be reading most of this aloud here for you, so do not worry about that. And there's lots of good pictures in this article, so I will explain what they are. What the researchers in this particular study were looking at, they were looking at biomarkers for leaky gut syndrome. And they wanted to see if there was some kind of an association with other kinds of antibodies, which means that there is some kind of inflammatory or autoimmune response going on in the body. Now, I'll read this one here for you, and then let's back it up a bit. The breakdown of the intestinal tight junction proteins, what are going to be talked about, zonulin and occludin, allows bacteria, toxins, undigested dietary proteins, and other antigens, foreign substances, to pass into the lumen, the opening of the intestinal tract, thereby increasing the number of inflammatory reactions and the activation of immune cells throughout the body. Now, let me fast forward here to this little picture because this is an absolutely beautiful picture that talks about the nature of leaky gut first. So the inside of your digestive tract is going to look something like that, where the cells are bound very, very close, just like this. Stuff shall not pass, only the stuff that the body says we want to be able to bring in, and we need to make sure that it's coming in through the right channels so that we can properly assimilate it. And these are what are known then as tight junctions of a semi-permeable barrier. In other words, stuff shall not pass. And the major, or among the major proteins that are involved in maintaining the integrity of that system, think of them like the glue. These are two little proteins that are called zonulin and occludin. Don't worry about the names so much, but just appreciate what they do. Now, as this diagram is going to show, if you have something going into your digestive system, you've put something in your mouth and it doesn't agree with you. And there could be any number of different pro-inflammatory kinds of foods or things that are just added into the food to, quote, enhance the flavor. If your body perceives them as neurotoxic, what that's going to do is going to invoke an internal inflammatory response. I use this as a bit of a silly example, but it illustrates my point. Imagine that you were to go running out into the bush and find a patch of poison ivy. What's going to happen to your skin? It's going to get red, it's going to get inflamed, it's going to get itchy, all that sort of stuff. Now, the cells of your skin are actually pretty much exactly the same as the cells of your digestive system. So appreciate, if you were to put something on your skin that's toxic, it's not good for you, it's going to get all red and inflamed. Similarly, you put something in your mouth and it goes down into your digestive system, it can produce that exact same kind of inflammation. And one of the major hints that I can give people, because we got all different kinds of anatomy, genetics, especially where diet's concerned. How do you know what's right for you? You're looking for something that makes you feel sapped of energy, bloated, and sick after you eat it. And usually that happens pretty darn quick. And the sense of bloating has nothing to do with the quantity of food. It's that I only had like a wee little bit of something like this, and I just felt so gross afterwards. That's a sign that whatever it is that you're eating is not good for you. It's definitely a process of trial and error, but one, as I'll illustrate here for you, is super important. You want to be able to listen to the signs that your body are telling you. Now, if you've then got that something into your digestive system that shouldn't be there and it produces that internal inflammation, what will happen is those normal tight junctions will start to separate like this. That's part of the inflammatory process. The problem then is that takes that normal semi-permeable layer and it starts to punch holes in it. And things then can start getting into your bloodstream through a method that should not have happened. And you can have the breaking off then of these exact same kinds of zonulin and occludin proteins. And any substance then that gets into your bloodstream in a way that the normal innate healing mechanisms of your body said this should not have been, that will then trigger your immune system to say, whoa, danger, danger, this is an intruder. And the intruder looks like this. And so we need to set up a defense mechanism, that is the activation of the immune system, allergic responses, and all of that in order to target this particular kind of thing. And one of the first things that it's going to do is it's going to say, hey, wait, we've got these floating pieces of stuff. And what it does is it recognizes then the normal zonulin and occludin proteins that are actually a normal part of you and your digestive system. It recognizes them as foreign and it produces antibodies that are now going to target those proteins if and where they get into your blood. Now, why do I mention that? It's because as they talk about in this article, if you ever have some kind of a test where you are looking at zonulin and occludin and you see elevated antibodies, that is the biomarker that means you are experiencing leaky gut syndrome. In other words, it's not just a matter of, well, maybe I'm sensitive to this food, or maybe I'm sensitive to that, or maybe I've got some kind of a digestive thing. It's like, no, it means you are experiencing leaky gut. Something that you are putting into your body is really not agreeing with you. And you've got to then figure out what that something is. You can either do that solo, but I would much sooner, you recommend with a qualified health professional who can help guide you through that particular kind of process. So this is the nature first of leaky gut syndrome. And then, of course, as we said, when stuff does get into the bloodstream that should not be there, that sparks a myriad of inflammatory responses. So now, not only do we have inflammation as if it would on the skin and of the digestive system, now the stuff gets into your blood and the blood circulates everywhere. And depending then where you may have individual weaknesses in your own body, that can also then infiltrate and start to cause autoimmune responses in other cells, other tissues of your body. And this is what the researchers were looking at. They were not looking at a causal relationship, I will say that, but they were looking for some kind of an association here. And they tested it against all different kinds of antibodies, meaning autoimmune responses in the body. And I'm going to fast forward it down to the take-home message right here. And I've highlighted some of the big ones here in bright yellow that are probably going to be of greatest interest, again, for people who are experiencing some type of chronic pain syndrome, chronic no energy syndrome. This is what we want to jump on. All right, before jumping into what this chart means, I need to explain to you what the odds ratio is. This is an increased or a multiplication risk factor. In other words, these are all of the different kinds of antibodies in people who were identified as having leaky gut syndrome because they have those elevated zonulin and occludin levels in their blood. They then wanted to see, well, what was the percent risk factor that you would actually see these other kinds of antibodies. And I've highlighted, again, some of the ones here in yellow that I want to emphasize. So first and foremost, 21-hydroxylase, an IgG and an IgA. An IgA, this is an antibody that is typically associated with allergic responses, and an IgG, that's one that's associated with like a primary immune response. What the 21-hydroxylase is, this is an enzyme that can be a biomarker when you see elevated antibodies for what's known as Addison's disease. In other words, autoimmunity against your adrenal glands, which are involved with the production of energy, sex hormones, and also metabolism of sugars, salts, and other kind of substances in your body. And have a look at that number right there. If you've got elevated, basically signs of leaky gut, you've got a 28 times, so 2,800% greater probability that you're going to be having antibodies that are targeting your adrenals that are involved with your hormone system, that are involved with producing energy. And then you can appreciate, well, if that organ, that part of your endocrine system isn't working right, there's going to be a knock-on effect that's going to affect everything in terms of how you feel. That's the importance, and that's what these numbers are. So let's jump onto the next big one here, alpha myosin. This is involved with the function of your muscles. It is 10 times greater for people who experience leaky gut. And this is going to produce what? Cramping, muscle pain, muscle breakdown in the body. Arthritic peptide, 30 times greater. Pain and inflammation in your joints, but not just joints in one localized part of your body, everywhere. Body is on fire with an inflammatory response. Cytochrome P450. This is an essential, basically, enzyme of sorts that is involved with the production of anti-inflammatory stuff in the body. 22 times greater. This is something that's necessary to basically clean up free radicals in your system. So you can appreciate then that not only do you have the overactive immune system, but what it's also doing is it's wiping out your body's ability to make the stuff that's necessary to detox and to repair. And before you know it, you have this positive feedback loop going where everything is starting to spiral out of control. And you can then take all of the essential vitamins and the supplements and that with the high vitamin C and the alpha lipoic acid and the glutathione and the N-acetylcysteine and all that. But if your own body can't synthesize it because you didn't clean up your diet, because you didn't realize you need to do that, you are just flushing money down the toilet. It's just going straight through you, and it's not making that desired kind of impact. Glutamic acid decarboxylase. This is going to be something that is essential for normal pancreas function. And when you see elevated antibodies here, 10 times greater, this becomes associated with type 1 diabetes, or perhaps more appropriately, we would say type 1.5. This is a type of insulin dependent, so you need some kind of a shot or injection or something like that with this. But this is not necessarily the kind where your pancreas just simply stops, working from when you were just a wee little kid. No, this is where very likely there's been a long-term inflammatory response, and it's just simply fatigued to the point where diet alone may not be able to fully manage that. And at least for a period of time, you're going to need to be doing, insulin-dependent shots in order to keep your body working. Now, here's the last big one that I want to jump on here. Cerebellar antibodies, 22 times greater. Cerebellum is a part of your brain. And what it means is you got elevated cerebellar antibodies, you are experiencing some kind of autoimmune inflammatory response that's targeting your neural tissue, your brain, your brainstem, your spinal cord, the electrical conductors that are giving life to all parts of your body. And this, then, you can appreciate, is the overlap in terms of what we are looking at in the chiropractic sense, is making sure that those transmission pathways are open, clear of interference, so your body's able to heal. But point is that the diet is not clean, and you've got an autoimmune inflammatory response here, potentially contributed by something that you're eating that doesn't agree with you. What we are doing is we are trying to swim against the current of the ocean. We are not going to win in that particular circumstance. So one of the things that I will say that actually surprised me a little bit, I'll point out this one right here, thyroid peroxidase. Even though it was elevated, again, an increased risk factor of 2.5 times is nothing to sneeze at. I'm actually surprised that the thyroid antibodies are not higher in this particular case. But I will cycle back to that one that's right below, the 21-hydroxylase. Interesting phenomena is that the adrenal glands and your thyroid glands, these work in concert to produce energy through your body. And so if you have diminished function of one, the other one is going to have to work even harder, potentially then to the point of fatigue. It's what's known as a secondary hypothyroidism. And in that particular case, you can take all of the thyroid stimulants and the iodine and the T3 and the T4 and all that sort of good stuff there. But if the problem is not actually your thyroid itself, but perhaps it's the adrenal glands, you're actually targeting the effect, not the primary cause, and then wondering, well, why doesn't this seem to be helping? Or this is fine as long as I keep doing it, but the underlying pathology, the rest of the sicknesses you might experience, they persist. Now, not saying then that diet is going to be the sole factor in all this, but I think you can appreciate, looking at these numbers here, that this is an absolutely huge factor for any person who is experiencing some kind of autoimmune condition. But I also want to point out for people who are experiencing chronic pain syndromes, chronic adrenal issues, so no energy, chronic fatigue, that you've got the breakdown of the energy system, you've got the breakdown of the muscle system, you've got the breakdown of the joint system, you've got the breakdown of the anti-inflammatory system, you've got the breakdown of the energy production system again, and you've got the breakdown of the neural system. This is an absolute train wreck waiting to happen here. And in order for body to be able to heal, because your brain is not stupid. It's just a case where the body is perhaps playing a bit of a trick on your brain, and it can shut off this immune cascade if you're able to identify what that primary cause is. And I repeat that diet in and of itself may not be the only factor that's involved, but based on this particular study here, this would suggest that a leaky gut syndrome and something that is in your body that should not be there is an absolutely huge and essential factor that you need to address if you actually want to be able to heal from these different kinds of conditions. I hope that this information is going to help guide you so that you can start looking for those positive changes in your life if you're experiencing one of these kinds of conditions. So that's what I've got here for you today. Thanks for watching. As always, please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And if you've got that friend, family member, colleague, or client who you think needs to watch this video because they were experiencing some of the things that I'm talking about here, please share that with them. If you want more information, you can reach out to me through drjeffreyhanna.com, or if you'd like to schedule a consultation, find out what we can do to actually help you out, you can reach us through our practice, which is clearchirospokane.com, or you can give us a ring at 509-315-8166. Thanks everyone for watching. This is Dr. Jeffrey Hanna at Clear Chiropractic. Get well, live well, stay well. Till next time, take care and bye-bye.